Everybody wants to jump on trends, and yes, there might be a place for that within your brand, but don't just look at what's happening outside your business. Look at what's happening inside your business.
Welcome everyone to Content Matters, the show where we go behind the scenes to look at content that builds trust in high-stakes environments. Today we're speaking with Holly Jones. Holly's a senior brand and content specialist with almost a decade of developing campaigns for some of Australia's biggest brands like AustralianSuper. What we're going to dive into with Holly is how to create content with compliance in mind that doesn't kill creativity. So how about we get into it?
It's a great topic, and compliance should be your best friend, key stakeholder. Nothing gets out the door without them. In my area in superannuation and finance, normally they're a big part of the puzzle.
Why is authentic storytelling and creating good content so hard in financial services or highly regulated industries?
It's always super complex. Let's be honest, no one really has time for it. The last thing you want to do at the end of the day is look at your finances, look at your super, look at your mortgage, whatever it might be. I'm the same, even though I work in that space. We just don't have the mental capacity. The more authentic we can start to make that content, the more accessible it is to people, the more it might just naturally fit in with what you want to look at and what you want to learn in your day. I think also there's so much information in this space. It's coming from all different levels. Some of it's super basic, some of it's very advanced. Quite often you're talking to experts that know the area so well, so passionate, it can sometimes be too much. There's a lot going on, but ultimately no one has time or interest for it.
People can create content that maybe is too complex for people to understand, which is a common trap. On the flip side, we've also got AI that is creating a sense of sameness. Everyone's talking about generative AI in content production. How are you seeing that show up? Is there a particular moment you've seen in your work where you're like, this doesn't really hit the mark?
With Google, same with any AI tools, the question you ask always has an answer. If you want a yes answer, you can find a yes answer. And if you want a no answer, you can find a no answer. It does come down to knowing how to interpret the results with anything financial. It's so nuanced and it's so personal. Those general things, for me, they can be useful to find out topics you might want to discuss with either your bank or your super company or your personal advisor for personal advice. They might lead you to the right questions, but I'm not sure anyone should be looking at them for answers. I think the worrying thing, especially in the influencers in social space, is that so many people are talking about what they know, and it might come from a good place, but it doesn't necessarily relate to you. The danger is you're getting advice or you're taking inspiration from the wrong questions in the beginning.
What are some of the things that you like to do to try and get you to the best outcome as quickly as possible?
For me, working at big companies like AustralianSuper and Aware and Suncorp, I've always been really fortunate to have this huge wealth of knowledge I can lean on in the business. Getting face-to-face over Zoom with the experts, for me, they're the people who are talking to consumers and customers every single day, whether it's your in-house financial advisors, whether it's your in-house education team. Like I said, with these big super companies, you've got access to amazing people who have been teaching for decades. They know what people are asking. They know the problems that are coming up again and again. For me, that's a really good place to start. Tapping into your expertise. Start there. Don't start with online searches of 10 most asked questions. Overlay that stuff, overlay the SEO needs. But for me, getting to know those people and starting with the humans in your business who are the experts is probably key to success.
And would you say that's one of the most overlooked things?
Quite often the day is back to back and there's a lot of stakeholders. It takes definite effort to book in half an hour with someone, find out about what they're working on, what their knowledge base is. It's important, but I think quite often it's overlooked, especially when you're partnering with other teams, objectives and agencies. Sometimes we forget to come back to the people.
How would you go about creating the story, leaning on those inside voices, and who do you get involved in the campaign development as well in a way that meets compliance?
Definitely getting the objectives straight from the outset. What are we trying to achieve and why? And that can be the structure of your conversation, whether it's an article or a video or an external influencer campaign. It's really important to try and stay focused on what your objective is. And then when you've got that, you can bring in the right people. That objective might have stemmed from marketing. It might have stemmed from brand. You can have that conversation with an internal expert. Once you've got the information, the process is pretty much the same. Obviously, you've got your content, you've got your structure, you've got your answers. Ideally, you've got the voice of that expert. Ideally, there'd be a little bit of customer or consumer data to cement why you're talking about it. So we know it's something we need to discuss, but what does the customer need? When you're working for a big company, you can normally tap into the insights and the data people that work in your voice of customer, for example, to validate the need to have that conversation. Even before you've started, if there are any issues with compliance, you can be really clear with them to say, this is the problem and this is what we're talking about and why. I've been really fortunate to partner with great compliance teams who are understanding of an editorial voice or mindset. They've always said they are not the gatekeeper of whether or not you go live, but they will highlight the issues. If there are issues in a bigger company, it's up to the head or the exec whether that risk is a problem or whether it's a small risk and you're willing to go forward with the content. Most cases that I've worked in, it is quite black and white, but for some people there might be a big grey area that depends on whether you want to test the waters with that piece of content.
Let's imagine that you are at the office and you know that there are tons of internal subject matter experts that you want to tap into. What are the tools you go to them with to say, hey, I want to pick your brain to develop a really engaging piece of content?
One of the first points for us is looking at who our brand spokespeople or advocates are, potentially speaking to the media team and looking at who they highlight through other pieces of content and earned media. It might be that you're working with an experienced voice who's used to answering these questions on a big consumer scale. The other side of it, and what also works well for social, is going a little bit more to the customer service team. So again, people who really know the customer pain points and are talking that consumer language on the phones or on chat, on email every day. They've already got the voice that you need. Quite often the problems that we know we need to fix, as content SMEs, we're not experts in the topic necessarily. We just have a really open, transparent conversation with them because they will know more about the correct answer than we will. And then it's our job to find ways to make that either interesting, make it more engaging, pick the right format to put that message out to the customers. It's not necessarily about us knowing the answer to the question. So it's really about listening and learning and then overlaying that with the content expertise rather than the subject matter expertise.
Everyone's so busy these days, though. As you said, that was one of the key problems as to why this is often overlooked. So what do you do to get their buy-in and say, can I have half an hour of your time? And how do you make that as productive as possible? Are you going to them with 3 specific questions before you meet up?
Ultimately, that comes back to strategy, being really clear with your narrative across a business. What is your content strategy? And keeping it as short as possible. If you can get it on 1 or 2 pages, and then making sure that stakeholders understand that content strategy. What is the objective? In a superannuation space, everything is for the member, and everyone in the business knows that. So everyone's quite willing to do something that will help the member, because that's why we're all there. That's why you're going to work. Making people give up their time to help you, having a really clear elevator pitch for your strategy and what your content is trying to achieve really helps. Then they can feel part of the success story. Personally, I don't think that content success is ever with one team. It's an enterprise win. So the more advocates we can get for that, the better.
Are you able to lean on one particular experience developing a campaign? How did you go about it? I've heard you mention bringing on influencers or advocates, and I'd love to hear how you gathered that content, how you produced that content, what layers of approval you needed to go through, and what the impact was.
Last year, we did a bit of a pilot. It's always about evolving what we're doing and trying new things. So we did an influencer campaign to talk about retirement and what retirement looked like. It's different for everyone, right? You and I will have very different ideas of what the ideal retirement is. So we partnered with a few different influencers, and it was the first time the business had done it. So it was about making sure that there was trust in what we were doing and that the purpose of what we were doing was really clear. In this case, we went for the top well-known influencer couple who had a lot of energy. Then we went for a couple who were just so authentic and likable and had a little bit of comedy in their output. And then we went with someone who had a very small following but was the right age and cohort. We thought her followers would benefit from knowing what we were talking about. Interestingly, we did not talk about product or service at all. The only association was the brand name and the partnership. We learned from our compliance team, you can't talk about anything to do with financial services if you're not a qualified advisor. In my experience, you couldn't have an influencer talking about a credit card and why you should get that credit card because they're not a financial advisor. They shouldn't be advising you on a product in the financial space. The way that we then approached it was to really let those people come back to us with how they would talk about the topic. How would you talk about retirement and independent kind of retirement choices and living your best retirement life through your lens? With influencers, you're not really there to advise them on that much because it's their communities, their voices. They don't work for you. The whole reason you're working with them is that they are individuals. The brief was light. We made it clear they weren't allowed to talk about anything. They weren't allowed to show the website. They weren't allowed to show the app. There was no advisory brand positioning. When we got to compliance, because everything we do goes through compliance, they were a bit confused as to what they were reviewing because there wasn't actually anything about the brand in their videos. It's more of a concept and a way of living. We just had conversations with them. We sat down and said, this is what we're doing and this is why. We still want to make sure that there's no risk involved. And then we went from there.
That's so fascinating. What happened with that campaign? How did it impact the business?
Well, it stemmed from a brand campaign that was in market. So it was work to support a mentality and a campaign that was quite big. There was TV, billboards, print ads, radio interviews, external media. It was our way to bring that ethos into our social channels through influencers rather than our own channels. It was an interesting one because we didn't talk about product, which seems so strange when you work in a content marketing space for a company. But it wasn't about that really. It was about the way that you can feel. We didn't need them to talk about the product. And the comments we got on those influencer reels were really interesting because we had people saying this is the best advert ever. I love seeing them live their best retirement. People were making the association themselves. We never said it was an ad, but it's sponsored content. People are so used to seeing it. So they're going to put two and two together without you actually having to make the connection for them. If they're interested, they might go to the website, see a landing page, start following us on social, whatever that might be. We're bringing people into our environment. The approach that one of our influencer couples had, people just loved that they were having a bit of fun with it and were partnering with a brand that fit their approach to life.
Going to management and saying, I want to develop a campaign working with influencers. We're not going to mention the brand. We're not going to mention any products. It's just going to be them talking about general stuff. That seems like a pretty hard pitch. Is that an approach you would recommend or you would do again for another brand?
It is now. We were very lucky because curiosity, innovation, and just trying new areas, as most people who work in content and social know, you don't have huge budgets to play with. So it's not costing an arm and a leg. And if it doesn't work, it's content that you can remove. There is a low risk in terms of longevity, but obviously it's out there for everybody to see. I would do it again, and we learned a lot through it. One of the girls in my team was very clear on, you do not brief an influencer. You tell them what they need to capture. And if they don't capture it, you can go back and they can do it again. They'll normally give you a storyboard of what they're going to do, and then they'll go off and do it. These are short snippets. It might be 90 seconds, and they know their audience so well that you just have to let them do their thing. We were very lucky because we had very open and supportive heads in the business and supportive execs. It worked for us in that instance. Based on that, there's not a lot I would change to do it again.
Would you say that outperformed some of the other campaigns which does have brand mentions?
The brand was there because it's co-branded with them. So you can see the brand. It's just not in your face. I don't think it's about outperforming. It's part of the voice, the narrative, and it's part of the way that you want to leave people feeling. I think for us, it just added that layer to the campaign. Whether or not people connected the dots with the campaign, that wasn't really our objective. It was about having a conversation in market at the same time from people that you can trust that would spark that thinking in your brain, so that then when you heard the radio ad or saw the TV ad or saw the brand on a billboard, you're going to just be more open to accepting that message.
So, in instances where you're creating content that does require a lot more rigorous review from compliance, can you tell me the steps? You've talked about having a record, Jira. Can you explain?
For us, everything has been Jira for the last 10 years. I'd say processes through Jira have been really important, especially with those financial institutions, whether it was a copy deck, whether it was a brief, whether it was final assets that needed signing off. We would put everything in a ticket in Jira. It would go to our compliance team. We'd probably give them a nudge that it was there. Quite often our content needed same day sign off. Even if you're the most organised people in the world, you always need same day sign off. So we would always have that on Jira. They would go in, and it just meant that it was audited from both sides. So if we did get audited, whether it was an internal audit, whether it was an external audit, everything was just there. We could just go to Jira, look at a ticket. We had one ticket with subtasks. It was really easy for us to say, this is when it got signed off. Here's the original copy. This is who signed it off. It's so easy to manage.
Jira is a common project management tool.
Yes, and it's so easy for multiple users, and everything can be visible. Your whole team can use the same ticketing system. In most of my time in finance, we've had the same compliance person. You can really build an understanding of what you need for your area versus maybe what another team needs. And then, of course, we've got all the common disclaimers they can check and make sure that the appropriate ones are there. If it says something about investment or financial advice and we've missed something, they'll add that disclaimer in, and it's all in one space.
So, with the compliance checks, what exactly are some of the fields or things that you specify in a copy deck? You've mentioned keeping a log of every interaction, which is great, but what about if we get really granular? Do you have things like when does this content expire, or who's the approver, or what version is this? Can you talk me through some of those little details that need to be in every single interaction?
When I've managed editorial projects with longer form copy, mainly articles, we would have everything in there. Your heading, your meta description, probably your social blurb, and then the article, and then at the end, all of the disclaimers. Everything would be there. We would normally get that signed off by the subject matter expert if someone had been quoted in it, or we might get it signed off by a subject matter expert if it's about a topic such as investment or a product, even if they're not quoted in it. That way, compliance can see that it's already been reviewed by the actual subject matter expert. They then can review it for anything that doesn't sit right with them. They can then pick up on this line is financial advice, and maybe you can't say that. You need to make it more general. Sometimes it's just little words that need tweaking to make it a general piece of advice, not something that you're promising an audience. Most importantly for us, especially from an editorial perspective, they would double check those disclaimers, and they would advise on when those disclaimers needed updating. If you were talking about returns, if your business rule is they need to be correct every 6 months, you would need to go back and update that content every 6 months. If you work for a business where there might be a line that you put in saying originally published on blah, 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 no updates, you've got to make people understand that the numbers that they're reading might not be the most recent numbers.
If you could summarize content and compliance in highly regulated industries.
The ideal working relationship between content and compliance, firstly, is establish a relationship before you need them. Tell them what your objectives are, get them across your strategy, get them across your approach to content. That way they're not going in blind and they're part of the journey. Secondly, make sure you've got some timelines agreed with them. If you need stuff back within 3 days and that's not appropriate for compliance, you need to work with them. Nothing can go live without them. So you have to work with compliance more than they need to work with you. quite often they're signing off everyone's work. So build understanding, build a relationship, and then make it really clear in how they sign things off. Let them know what you think might be the risk areas. And if you know enough about your disclaimers, put them in. Don't expect your compliance team to put the disclaimers in. Part of your role as the editorial manager or creator is to put the disclaimer into the piece of copy for them to sign off. They should be repetitive across your content. If they're wrong, compliance will change them and let you know, but it means you can speed up their sign off. So the more you can do to help them, the more they can help you.
Have you ever been audited?
Yeah, many times.
What does that look like and how does that make you feel?
The first time it happens, you feel like you might have done something wrong, but then you understand that most people are being audited across the finance sector, which is good for consumers. Normally, they're just looking at everything as a whole. It might be that they're looking at an industry as a whole just to see what's being said about what, because there might be a new responsibility that's put onto a company to communicate a topic better. Now, that's not probably you, your work and your company. It might be an industry-wide thing. The better you log your work, the easier it is to provide information for an audit. If you've got Word documents in a folder on your computer and they're not categorized properly or they're not in a shared space, or you've got stuff in emails, that's even worse. You've got sign off in emails or on MS Teams. It's just a mess. So having everything in one place, whatever that place might look like, will make your life so much easier. For us, the other thing that really helped with audits was our social media tool, because we could just export a report straight away to say this is everything we've published on a certain topic between certain dates. You can submit that whole file and it can take 5 minutes.
Thank you. Let's talk about how AI has been creeping into our work as content creators. Maybe there's a playbook or some practical strategies you can share with people. When a team is stuck, who do you go to first? How do you get access to them quickly?
At a larger company, you might have a voice of customer department. You might have a data insights department. They're great because they're normally talking to people. They're having customer conversations. They're capturing insights and data to lead the business strategy or other team strategy. Sitting in their meetings, putting your hand up and saying, can I just come and join? You can get so much inspiration, education as well, particularly in the super space. If there's an education team, they are having these conversations with people daily or weekly. So tapping into what are people saying to you after the seminar? What are they saying after the webinar? Finding out those little tidbits and insights is really important. I think if you're really stuck going to customer service, if you're lucky enough to have an in-house customer service team, sit in the meeting, find out what they're being asked, what people are saying. All of that data is there. All of the insights are there. And then you can look at how you leverage it. Be the detective. No one's going to come to you with it because nobody realizes how important it is beyond their world. It's not their job to feed you insights and interesting conversations. You've got to go and find it. It's all about connection with people in the business.
And when you are creating that content, what phrases are you cutting, making sure that they don't ever see the light of day from a compliance perspective?
I think anything that sounds decisive, it's not our job to decide for people. It's our job to put forward the solutions that they can choose from so they can make their own decision. My content belief is always make the customer more confident. From a content marketing space and a brand space, it's not my job to sell you a product. That's the marketing team potentially. My job is to make you confident enough to read that email and then go forward and make the decision with a little bit more understanding of either what you want out of it or a little bit more understanding of the topic, and then you can make a decision.
In the context of AI, rather than using it for source content, using it to scale, is that your thinking?
I'm really interested in all of the kind of custom ChatGPT models that people are building for brand voice, telling them what to say and what not to say. We used to use a tool called Monsido, and that would let you put your brand voice and guidelines in. And if your apostrophes are in the wrong place or you're using numbers over words, whatever the rules might be, just the consistency for me is important. Obviously, it's going to spit out some easy structures for you. If you've got a topic and bullet points, it might give you 3 ways to explore that topic. The other thing it's good for is giving you ideas and inspiration of how to explore a topic for a certain age group.
Can you explain a couple of examples where you personally have used AI and you found it really useful versus you've used AI and found that it wasn't really useful?
I think it's useful if you've written a social post and you just want to tighten it up. Sometimes you're too close to the topic and sometimes you know too much about a topic. I think it's really good for sense checking things. Personally, I don't think it's a good place to start writing. So I think for social, sense checking what you're saying for your audience, it's going to just tighten it up and give you that kind of second way of thinking. I think it's useful to look at different topics for different age groups to see how they might differentiate slightly. I don't love using it for points you might include in your article because it's going to spit something out, and every time you ask it, it's going to give you a different answer. You still need to be the content expert based on the people you're talking to. What are the 4 questions that are most asked after a seminar? Now, ChatGPT will tell me what that could be, but they're not going to tell me what it actually is for our customers and our demographic. It's really good to tighten things up at the end, but I'm still wary about it doing most of the grunt work.
And that's where it's off limits for you.
Well, everything is evolving. We don't lean on it for heavy content creation, or I haven't in the past. I think it just depends. We'll have to see how they resource teams and what they want from their content. I think it will be a bit of an arc where there'll be a peak use of it. As everyone's saying, it will all sound the same and there'll be no personality, no brand voice. That is the differentiator for me. I wonder if it will come down the other side and we'll end up where we were before, but maybe a little bit more efficient.
What would you say to other social content creators or brand content creators in highly regulated industries when they are going about their work trying to create something engaging but also compliant?
I would say look in as much as you look out. Everybody wants to jump on trends, and yes, there might be a place for that within your brand, but don't just look at what's happening outside your business. Look at what's happening inside your business, especially if you're new to an industry or a business. Carve out the time to talk to the people and understand all the voices within the business, because there's so much knowledge there and so much inspiration to draw from. Quite often we're looking at competitors and what other people are doing. But if you really want to be authentic to your brand, you got to know the people who are the brand.
Excellent. Thank you. And maybe one takeaway, what can every content creator add to their copy deck when they submit it to compliance tomorrow?
Find out what your disclaimers are and help your compliance people sign off your work quicker. Be really clear on a summary is just a really great way to say to them, this is who it's for, this is why we've done it, this is maybe what it aligns with, maybe this is where it's being used. Then if you're lucky enough to have a list of disclaimers, learn them. Sit down with your compliance team and understand which one goes where. For me, that's really helped to speed up sign-offs, especially if there's multiple sign-offs in a day that we need from them. It's just showing respect for what they do as well. So I would start there.
Thank you, Holly. If people would like to connect with you, where can they find you?
On LinkedIn, that's the best place to find me.
Excellent. Thank you, Holly Jones.